Now, if there's one thing that people ask me when they're moving to Florida that is what they're most concerned about, it's about alligators. And I know it's a little different than what my normal videos are, but I think today it's really important that we're going to explore what the iconic Florida alligator is all about. Is it something you need to worry about? We'll debunk some of the myths, and also I'm going to tell you a heart-pounding story of something that happened with me as a close encounter with an alligator. Stay tuned. Now, when you think of Florida, you think of several things. Number one, you probably think of the beaches, the palm trees, the hot, beautiful weather, maybe some flamingos, and probably, most likely, alligators. So alligators live in the southeast portion of the United States, but Florida is really known for its alligators. In fact, there are over 200,000 alligators in Everglades National Park and over 1.5 million of these creatures that exist throughout the entire state of Florida. So when you're here, you'll see them, so let's figure out if there's something you need to be worried about. First of all, let's start off with the facts. The alligator can grow up to 11 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds. This is a substantial creature that has been around for 37 million years. Really the closest relative that we know today to a dinosaur. And if you spent any time around them, they kind of look like one as well. But sharp teeth, they can pack a punch of a bite of over 2,000 pounds per square inch. You're not going to want to be anywhere near those jaws, and we're going to teach you how to not be a victim of an alligator attack. I remember when I moved to the state of Florida, I like to go fishing, and I go saltwater fishing, but I also like to go bass fishing. And so as part of that, we have so many different lakes or ponds that are around in Florida, and I just remember being very scared to go to the edge of the pond and throw my lure out there because I just had these visions of a National Geographic TV show where there's this crocodile that jumps out of the water and grabs the gazelle and pulls them back into the water, and that's the end of the gazelle as we know it. I mentioned that was a crocodile. That's not what alligators typically do. Actually, alligators are quite lazy. If you see an alligator in Florida, chances are it might be coming up out of the water and just staying there, or maybe it's sunning on the top of a bank in the winter months to try to warm itself in the colder months of the year. But alligators, as we know, are actually quite lazy. Now, that being said, with the sheer number of alligators that are around, chances are that you may come in contact with one. Generally, we like that when that's from a distance, but I remember specifically, this was about 10 years ago, and I was showing property to clients who were looking to move to Florida. They're from Wisconsin, and they were coming down, and a lot of, Florida, we have people who move from all over the world who relocate here for obvious reasons. But one of the questions, we were looking at a specific property that had a beautiful lake view. Most people think that is very positive. I remember specifically the wife asked me and said, "Hey Brad, are there alligators in that lake?" And my response to her was, well, I mean, it's a freshwater lake in the state of Florida, so I'm not sure if there's any in there, but there certainly could be. And it was right at that moment that alligator comes up out of the water and surfaces, and the wife just absolutely freaked out. And the husband and wife, I'm still very good friends with them, they tell that story often because the husband said, it was at that moment that I knew that I could trust you to help us purchase this home, because the reality is, like, they exist everywhere, and I certainly wouldn't lie about that. So what do you have to do to protect yourself against the alligator? So primarily alligators will move at night. I've actually got pictures recently of, it was in my own neighborhood where an alligator was crossing a street at night. Other than that, they're pretty docile. So if you come across them at night and they're crawling across the street, just let them be and let them do their thing. If you don't mess with them, they won't mess with you. Now, primarily an alligator's diet consists of fish, turtles, birds, things that you would find in a pond, and they play a pivotal role in the environment here in Florida. So we actually do need these creatures. If you find them in neighborhood ponds, they typically are not going to cause any issue. And the real issue is when humans get involved and humans start feeding the alligators. If a human starts feeding the alligator, essentially what's going to happen is they think they're doing a good thing by feeding this wild creature, but eventually that alligator is going to become more comfortable being around humans, and it could create an environment where it's just not safe for people anymore. And typically what happens is the Florida Fish and Wildlife, they end up coming and euthanizing that alligator because of the human. It's very rare that the alligator is one to cause an issue. Now, that being said, issues can exist. And actually, if we look at the history in the past 100 years, in the entire United States, there have been approximately 40 alligator attacks that led to somebody dying. So 40 deaths over 100 years is actually a very small number. In fact, you are 300 times more likely to get struck by lightning and over 1,000 times more likely to win the Powerball jackpot than you are to be killed by an alligator. So it's something you need to worry about? Not really. It's so statistically low of something bad happening. Here are some things that you can do to make sure that it doesn't, however. So number one, don't make a lot of noise on top of the water. If there was one attack where somebody was dangling their feet over fresh water and like slapping them in the water, and an alligator thought that that was some kind of an injured animal, and sure, went up and grabbed them, and there was an alligator attack that happened there. Number two, do not swim at night. And a good general rule of thumb is don't swim in fresh water in the state of Florida or anywhere in the southeastern United States, because it could be possible that there's an alligator there. Unless you're thrashing around, they're probably not even going to be interested in you, even if you are in the same body of water. But let's just not do that. We're just not going to swim in fresh water in the state of Florida. And of course, as I mentioned, don't feed them, and don't walk your dogs next to a body of water really close, or have the dogs go swimming, because that's an animal to them, and that may fall victim to an alligator attack. So let's debunk a couple myths about alligators. Number one, there's the myth that an alligator can run 35 miles per hour. Now, here's the deal. It's a big reptile. They have very small legs, and they can go quickly in a very short period of time. And so a second part of this myth is that if an alligator is chasing you, that you should run in a zigzag pattern to get rid of it. Now, I have visited certain wildlife sanctuaries that have alligators, talked to people who handle these alligators all of the time on a daily basis, and they say that is just terrible advice. The advice is that you run. You can zigzag, but if you think about it, if you're zigzagging back and forth and the alligator is going in a straight line, you're not getting away any faster. You're actually making it easier for the alligator to get you. So that's not a great idea. They have a very short endurance, and so if you just run more than 50 yards or 100 yards, they're not going to be able to keep up with you any longer at that point. They don't have any interest in you as a human being, so unless they're confusing you for something else, chances are that you're going to be just fine. Run away real quick. So let's talk about my experience that I'm not so proud of, but I had an experience with an alligator. It was actually quite frightening. So what ended up happening is I was fishing in one of those freshwater ponds, and I had seen over in a drain culvert, I had seen something that looked like it could have been a floating coconut in the water. I was fishing with a topwater lure on that given day, and I threw it probably 20 feet away from where that coconut was. And as soon as my lure hit the water, splashed down, I saw the coconut move and figured out really quickly that's no coconut, that's actually an alligator. And so it wasn't a very big alligator, probably 3 to 4 feet. And so what I did is I saw as soon as it splashed, he started coming towards that lure that was in the water, okay? Thinks that there's something on there that could be interesting as food. So then I started reeling in the line, and he started going after it, and that line's coming to me. He's going towards the lure, and so then I start reeling faster, and then he starts swimming faster, and then I started reeling really fast to where that top water lure is just going on top, and all of a sudden this little alligator is just thrashing on top of the water, coming as quickly as it can, and both of those things are coming right at me on the shore, you know, on the shore. And so I backed up really quickly to kind of get out of the way. I should have just stopped reeling in. That would have been very wise, but I didn't. And I started backing up and I tripped, and then all of a sudden that alligator came up on the edge of the shore, and then he stopped right there. He saw me, didn't want to have anything to do with me, and that was the end of that. But I can tell you, the heart was absolutely beating out of my chest, and that was just me not being very smart and dealing with the situation of that lure. So again, not the alligator's fault, but it was, you know, a little too close for comfort for me. And what all of the people that take care of alligators say is it's those little ones, it's the juvenile ones that are actually a lot more dangerous, because they've got very sharp teeth, they're a lot more aggressive and a lot more energy, and they can, you know, take off a finger or something like that very quickly. So here's what I would tell you. Coming to Florida, it's really not something to be very concerned about, and actually over time, they just become part of nature. Like, oh, there's an alligator. You know, it's just second nature. It's sort of like spotting a bird or something like that. So they're not a very big deal in the scheme of things. The other thing that I would say is it's very important that you familiarize yourself with them and actually go to a wildlife sanctuary or one of the swamp boat places, airboat places, because they give you a close interaction with an alligator, and it can give you a really good appreciation for the alligator. And actually, you could even have a chance to hold an alligator, a little baby alligator, and it's just a really good experience, especially if you have kids. It's very fun. Also, to note, there are crocodiles as well. So we have an American crocodile here in the state of Florida. A lot fewer of them, a lot harder to come by, but they do exist here in Florida as well. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content, if you could go ahead and subscribe to the channel or check out my most recent video, that would be amazing. Hope you have an awesome day, and we'll talk soon. Thanks so much.